welcome back everybody. Same shirt, so let's get that on the table right now. So no conflict on that one. Hey, I do hope that these past number of weeks you have found this series to be helpful and practical and meaningful. And we've had a chance to really talk a lot about some really key issues as it relates to the issue of reconciliation. And the fact is that we, as Christ followers, are ambassadors of reconciliation. We are the ones who get to model what it means to demonstrate and show forgiveness and to restore a relationship that's been broken because of conflict, to actually provide an image of what it means to be healed in the same way that Christ has healed you through the forgiveness of your own sins to others as well. So over the past few weeks, we've talked about just really some key factors of conflict, that we all have conflict, that we need to bring God in the midst of the conflict, that as we talked about last week, that at some point you've got to make a decision to remove the log from your own eye and look in the mirror and address the issue with yourself as well. And let me just say that when you do that first, what it does is it sets the stage for what you're going to talk about next and what we're going to talk about this week. That when I bring myself to a place of humility, when I acknowledge that I play a part in this conflict as well, when I'm able to look in the mirror at the log sticking out of my own eye, and I can step back and I can ask the Lord now to give me a sense of perspective and a sense of understanding and compassion, even with the individual I may be in conflict with, you really are at that point ready to move to the next step, and that is to go to the person. Matthew 18 talks about that. We talked about it this past week as we talked about the steps towards this process of restoration, and how there comes a time when we need to go privately to an individual, and we just sit down with that individual privately, and we need to address what the issue is, and we need to lay it out on the table so that together we can bring this relationship back to a place of wholeness and to a place that really does glorify and bring honor to the Lord. And so as it relates to conflict, so many times conflict happens certainly in the home. It may happen between parents and children, or children and parents. It happens between a husband and wife on a regular basis. If you're in a marriage, you are in conflict in multiple ways at multiple times, and God uses that conflict to strengthen you and refine you. And it happens in our personal relationships. It happens in our corporate relationships, in our workplaces as well. And so as it relates to conflict, we thought it would be a really great idea to invite a couple folks in that have had the experience of having to deal with conflict in their workplaces, and how they had to come to a place of reconciling those issues as well, because those are real issues to each and every one of us, and how they really had to live Matthew 18 out within their work. And so you're going to listen to Brian, and you're going to listen to Lisa, and they're going to both share as leaders what it means to live out and model a biblical framework for conflict resolution. And so here's Brian and here's Lisa.
Hey, I'm Lisa Sandstrom, and I'm a Fort Wayne native, and I'm a second-generation owner of a small business in the printing and promotional products industry. Have been with the company for 25 years, owned it for 7, and deal with conflict on a regular basis in the company, both with employees and with vendors and with customers. I've been part of Pathway for many years now, and I'm active as a small group person. I do the leading of our discussions in small group. I also serve on the First Impression team as a greeter, and I help serve communion.
My name is Brian Cromwell. My wife Erin and I have been going to Pathway for a little over 2 years now. We have 2 little girls, Charlie and Ellie, and we're working on our 3rd adoption right now. We host a small group at our home. We also serve in the Connection community on Saturday nights, and we're team leaders on the True Vine orphan ministry as well. I'm a HR manager at a manufacturing company up in Kendallville called Hendrickson. I've been with them for 13 years and been at this facility here for about 3 years.
As far as engaging an individual during a conflict, we do that in several different ways in my organization. Usually it takes place over the phone, or it takes place through email. And one of the first things that I do is make sure that I acknowledge that I understand where they're coming from, regardless of what the issue is, and let them know that I really care about what's happening, that I'm really sorry that it has happened the way it has, and that we're going to fix it and make it right for them. And that's the first thing I do, just try to connect with them and let them know. And if I have to, I let them blow off some steam. And that's okay. If they're upset, they're allowed to be upset. And I just try to stay calm, which can be a challenge at times. But if I stay calm and give them a chance to vent, from there we can usually tackle about anything.
Humbly engaging others in conflict is a very challenging thing. In my experience, even the most senior leaders shy away from engaging in conflict. Even the most experienced ones are good at resolving it when it comes to their attention, but actually engaging someone in conflict for a peaceful resolution is challenging. One of the most impactful things that I've found is simply letting God define the win. Sometimes I take it upon myself and my own expectations to lead what a win looks like. And taking that extra step to make sure that I pray to make room and leave room for God to move, to define that win, really opens us up to a lot more possibilities, and it makes me a lot more willing to listen.
My personal Christian witness impacts how I approach a conflict because I begin from a point of love. And in our business, we're servants, we're serving people. And I'm very much a servant leader. So to come into a conflict from a Christian point of view makes me think of Bill Hybels saying, love everyone always. And you can be harsh, but you don't have to be mean. And that dictates my conversation. And I also attempt to be positive and speak positively to the person I'm confronting instead of berating or belittling or saying negative things, you don't, you can't, global kind of things. I try not to even say you, but it allows me to approach it from a whole different perspective than what the world does.
One of the most impactful things that even just here at Pathway in Re-Engage, Gordon brought up the concept of brokenness, and I think that's made a huge impact on the way that I relate to people in conflict at work. I think it's easy as a Christian to look at a situation and say, yeah, we're all broken. But to take it a step further and say, no one of us is more broken than the other, I think really helps in a situation of conflict to see yourself in someone else, to say, I can get that angry if I was in that situation, and allowing someone to relate to you and vice versa and build that trust really helps to have a solid understanding when you're addressing conflict. I'm definitely far from perfect. I made plenty of mistakes of not showing humility and love to coworkers, especially in conflict situations. A time in particular, thinking back really early on in my career, first time I'd worked in a manufacturing environment, I had made some great friends out on the floor, but I was still pretty naive when it came to real life circumstances. And I noticed a friend of mine that worked on the production floor had been really distant to me lately. So I went and I just approached him and said, hey, what's the problem? I thought I could be brash and direct, and found out later that I had been extremely insensitive to a family situation that he was going through earlier, very transactional. And it's something that stuck with me a long time, is that at the end of the day, you never really know what someone's going through. And you can never assume the intentions of another person. And that's something I always remind myself of, is anytime I find myself catching myself with trying to assume the intentions of another person, it's impossible. You got to go in with an open heart. You have no idea where they're coming from until you hear it from them.
When I think of the whole concept of peacemaking, a business coach that I used to work with once taught me a concept, and that is to stay above the line. And when we think of staying above the line, we think above it is ownership, accountability, responsibility. That's what I have to take on, and that's what I expect my people to take on as well. If you drop below that line, you're going into blame, excuses, and denial, and there's just no place for that, and it'll get you stuck. And so that whole concept, and I even have it printed out and on my wall to remind me, always stay above that line. Don't drop below it.
On the topic of peacemaking, I had a great mentor of mine really early on in my career tell me that 98% of people want to work collaboratively towards a common goal. and that 2% of every workforce are cave people. And I thought that was really insensitive from an HR perspective to say that, but he elaborated and said cave people mean citizens against virtually everything. And putting that into context, he said, those people are still extremely important. They just motivated differently. Rather than try to find a common goal, you need to find something they're already passionate about and align that with a business objective, a team objective. So in terms of trying to rally people around a common vision, you can do it with everyone. You just need to do it differently depending on what people are truly motivated by.
Thank you for the opportunity to share our experiences with you today. Now it's time to throw it back to your small group host.
And we'd highly encourage you to focus on the life at home question. I think it's a great opportunity to practically apply the lessons that we talked about here in a way that'll make a real impact at home.